Welcome to our LinkedIn Live podcast. My name is Gerhard Schwartner. I'm the founder and publisher of Selling Power magazine. And our guest today is from Canada, Paul Hanson. He's VP of Enterprise Learning and with CGS. And they developed a technology called Cicero. And I read up on it, and it's really incredible that this is a technology that was originally used to train physicians to do operations. Correct?
Yeah, it stemmed from that. Yes, we were doing work for, it's no secret, we do work for Medtronic and virtual reality. And the natural extension of that was to provide another tool that could help their people. So we were training the people who sell these to physicians. So then the idea was, why don't we help train them how to sell these very complex and expensive devices? Right. So it's been a very interesting journey, and it's a very compelling business case for many, many companies around the world. And if you'd allow me, I was in Geneva in December, and it was no secret that I was probably the last person on board with, quote, Gen AI, because in my world, I have a 6-year-old laptop, a 6-year-old phone, and a 7-year-old car. And unless there's something wrong with it, or you've got to show me why I should get a new one, it's hard to get me to move. So call me a curmudgeon. But as we were developing this, I really shook my head and I wondered, do they truly need this? Or who's going to use it? So I committed to using it, and I became, I guess, the expert in it in terms of trying to break it. And I've done hundreds of these scenarios. And one day I was in Geneva in a hotel, and there was a conference going on, an internal conference. And it was a pharmaceutical company. I won't tell you who it was, but a large pharmaceutical based in Switzerland. And I saw the name, and I said, that's interesting. I looked them up. So that night, I sent the head of learning an email, and I said, maybe we should talk. But I knew he would never call me back. So the next morning I went downstairs, and as they say, I found a sheep separated from the herd, and I talked to this girl for about 3 hours. We just talked, and she asked what I did. I asked what she did. And then I said, why don't I create, using Cicero, a role play on how your people would sell to against a competing pharmaceutical company? She said, that would be cool. We did it. And I said, if you think it's worthy, send it to your head of learning. I sent him an email last night, but I'm sure he'll never respond. He got right back to me within an hour and said, we need to talk. And he was using it before 5 p.m.
Wow.
And I've never in my life, because our traditional business is custom training, which takes 12 to 14 weeks to build. But I've never in my life been able to sit down and create a situation in 5 minutes that was applicable to their business and have them react that way. And I had 4 meetings in Geneva over 3 days, and every interaction was the same. And that was the day I said I really became a believer, because I'm going to be honest. Let's say I've seen it all in PowerPoints. I've heard enough BS. And that's why I hate to use PowerPoint. So what I typically do, if there's somebody that I think might be interested, I create a role play for them and say, try it out. Let me see what you think. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to hog the conversation, Gerhard.
Well, it reminds me of, I grew up in Europe, and I worked for a French construction equipment company. And I studied the best approaches of the best salespeople in Germany, in France, in England, in the United States. And I realized that the top people, they have a different way of relating to the customer. They ask different questions. They have different openings that break the ice. They immediately get the buyer to talk about the challenges that they're facing. And I thought, why don't we create a video role play where we show the best practices? So I took notes when I traveled with the top salespeople, and and created scripts for actors. And I created like 5 video role plays, and I asked salespeople, I showed it to them, what was good and why, and what can be improved and how. So they learned how to appraise the role play that the actors performed, and all the sales managers wanted to hire the best actor with the best script. They said, "I want to hire this guy," and then we said, "Let's rehearse that." And I gave him a script, or a guideline, like you created role plays. I created short role plays. I said, now we videotape that and we analyze it.
Yeah.
And that was such a fascinating process because my background is also in acting. I was in an amateur theater and I learned how to direct. So I said, my role is to help salespeople impersonate a professional. And they took to it, and then we measured the sales results. We got within 8 weeks a 37% lift in sales. And especially the people in Germany, they wanted to video role play, like until 10 o'clock at night. They wanted to do it perfect. They wanted to have the best response to a customer objection. And I remember one salesperson came up with the idea, the sweetness of low price is quickly forgotten when you have to deal day after day with the bitterness of low quality. So all the salespeople were taking notes and they learned from the best.
And role play is one of those things that some people fear. And what you described probably took you weeks to do. And so when we started looking at what is the best application of generative AI, and we're not out to try to, there's some that, they talk about AI as taking away the need for any of us to work. Our view was we wanted to develop things that could help people and help people in their work, so that if you're a salesperson face to face, this is why we developed the role play solution. What role plays that you described don't do well is they don't scale really well, and they don't account for the curmudgeon who hates salespeople, who might want this or might want that. So effectively, what we've done is take what normally takes weeks, and we've made it. And what we do is we give the console to the somebody at the company, and they create the role plays themselves for their own people. And the lovely thing about this is they can go up against any type of avatar. So we actually have ocean personality traits where you have a slider, or you can just say the person hates salespeople. And then you can watch the 5 sliders change to accommodate that persona. So as we were doing a product launch a couple of weeks ago in New York, and we had Medtronic come, and the person who's key to using this at Medtronic said, what we like about this is we can create role plays in 5-10 minutes for a surgeon we're going to see, and we all know who the surgeon is, and we know his behavior, and we practice. But she said, and when you create these role plays, the individuals can be easy, medium, hard, or very hard. So she says to us, we only use very hard. But occasionally we put an easy one just to make them feel a little bit better, but they'll never get an easy one. And so you do this, they create these role plays in any situation that they want. And then they basically send you a link. So I'd send you a link and Gerhard, why don't you, do this role play? And you would, just as you would talk to an avatar, and that's another thing that we have is avatars that will speak to you. And they speak in 17 languages, and we have 29 languages in total available. So for example, if you were selling to Austria and you wanted to practice your pitch in Austrian or German, you would do so, or Arabic or French or Portuguese or Chinese, whatever you want. And so when you're done interacting with this role play, and it's only for a few minutes, then it triggers an assessment. And the assessment will score you on a scale of 10. And the person creating these role plays can weight anything they want, in different areas on accuracy, convincing, are they convincing, whatever. And then it will tell you what you did well, what you did poorly, and how to improve it. And then it gives you a transcription of the entire discussion. Yeah. And so after I send this to you, if I'm an administrator, I can have a look to see how you did, and I can see how you talked. So it's one of these things. It's immediate, it's scalable, and the biggest thing is it's very objective. And when we talk to airlines, and I was surprised at this, so the head of one of the airlines saw this and said, this is intriguing because the biggest problem we have in training cabin crews is with unions. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they often say that the person who is assessing them and marking them doesn't like them, likes Gerhard better than Paul, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so subjective that they have so many grievances dealing with these assessments that they do with humans that they said, this is a game changer, that we can use this and everybody gets the same. But it's unscripted, so they'll never be exactly the same. So it's very interesting how it all works and who uses it.
Well, what I like most about it is the customization potential with AI. So if you call on a surgeon that is very action focused, that's very precise, that uses very crisp, short sentences, and has very little time, so you can dial the role play into that persona and train your agent to represent that personality and that mindset 100%. So then literally you can almost say that the salesperson can communicate and rehearse and practice with surgical precision, pun intended. So that
and I was going to say, one of the other things you can do as well is if and a lot of pharmaceutical companies use this. So if you know that they're using a particular drug and you're trying to replace that, you can basically say, I'm a salesman selling this drug and they're using this drug, and it creates the whole role play and when you ask the avatar, what drugs are you using? When you ask the surgeon, what are you using? He'll tell you what you're using. What they're using. So you have to respond to that. So you can make it so precise that there's no time wasted, so that you know how to do this. And the interesting thing about this is there's sort of two sides to Cicero. There's the role play side, but more, and as importantly, is the coach side. And what I mean by coach is that we have an area where you can drag and drop your content into the coach and ask it any question. And you can say, give me an elevator pitch. I'm selling widgets. Give me an elevator pitch in case I meet the Minister of Health. And then it'll give you an elevator pitch, and you said, make it briefer. So you can basically, it's smart enough that it will tell you what I often do, Gerhard, is, as an example with KLM, I take their annual report, put it into coach, and then I tell them, ask any question about any financial number anywhere. And what it also does is optical character recognition. So if we have a graphics where overlaid is text on, our sales were, it actually ingests that as well. So what you end up with is, and I'll tell you how I just used it today. I just responded to a very large RFP today on traditional training. And so then I said last night, you know what I should do is I'm going to create a coach. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop the entire RFP into it, which was more than 100 pages. And then I have an avatar, and the avatar says, Paul Hanson asked me to be here in front of your office here in London, England, to answer any questions you may have. And then you can ask it anything. You can ask what our price was. You can ask what any definition is. And it's one of those things that they go, this is very cool. And I said, what would be even cooler is You have our response to an RFP, but if you used our solution, you could drag in all 5 RFPs and ask who has the lowest price. Tell me what the prices are for the 5 companies. Tell me who does this. Tell me who can do translation into 199 languages. So Coach is very, very valuable. And the nice thing about Coach as well, it does 29 languages. So I was just with a group today that encourages economic development. We have a lot of newcomers that come here. So their idea is they're going to put Coach up on their website, and new immigrants can come in and ask it any question. And the nice thing about this is you can do this with ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is learning from everything you're doing. So what this does, it isolates it. It doesn't learn, so it's safe and secure in its own pod, if you will. And anything you put in there is secure. Any questions you ask, nobody else is learning. And it really has tremendous possibilities. And the way people like Medtronic use it, they put all of the data that they have on any particular medical device. And so we just introduced speech to speech. So you press the microphone once, and while they're driving the car to go meet with a physician, they are asking questions through Bluetooth. Tell me what we have for staplers for this type of whatever. You can ask it and it will respond back and forth. So as they're driving to because I said, why would they need speech to speech in a Coach format? And they said, that's why, because on their phones, they can start to interact with it and ask questions with it. So it's very, very cool.
So you have almost a digital personal assistant that can coach you and prepare you for any sales situation. I think it's brilliant. It's not just the rehearsal part that your skills and your performance gets better, but also your conversations get better. So how does that apply to the onboarding process? I would imagine that you can accelerate onboarding with that because you bring salespeople up to speed a lot faster.
Yeah. And so the way we would, role playing, the point of role playing is you have your top performers, and then you have your low and medium. The whole point of training, the whole point of role plays is to bring up the people closer to that top level. That's what we're all trying to do.
Right.
So normally what happens is in an onboarding situation, you have situations where, they have courseware that you have to sit through and you're done. But now nobody knows if you have the competency to sell or not. What I used to say to salespeople that worked for me was, for the first 4 to 6 weeks, if you want to practice selling to anybody, pick the companies you'll never sell to, because you're going to be so poor at what you do. Because it's from experience and practice, right? So what this allows you to do is you finish the training, and on the last slide of the training, you can have a link to Cicero. And you click on that link, and now what you're going to do is you're going to do a role play associated with us onboarding that you just did. The nice thing about that is because we give the companies that are using this, essentially we give them a template if they're using Rise or Storyline, or we'll give them some other API. But when they click on this, it's transparent to them that they're going to this role play on Cicero. And what will happen is their LMS will gather the information, their scores, pass, fail, all of that type thing, depending on their LMSs. And it's completely transparent to the whole thing. So it's one of these things that they'll do it once. And then if you look at, and we always say, don't try to give this to everybody. You could, but things using generative AI, it's not the cheapest thing in the world. So you should use it strategically. Use it for your poor performers, using it for new products. And I'll give you an example. When LA was burning, I said, there's going to be a lot of insurance companies getting phone calls. And so, and I don't mind, I just cold called. What I did with Allstate was I created a role play, and with LA burning in the background, and the whole role play was they don't provide insurance in LA. But I said, here's what's going to happen. People are going to be calling you for insurance. So whether you sell it or not, you're going to get thousands and thousands of calls. Well, just by giving them that role play, it was intriguing enough that more than a dozen of them got on a call, and they were just it's so cool because this is one of those things that it's so immediate that imagine you have a business. Like, I mean, we deal with people like Maersk, the container ship people. Something happens in the Panama Canal or whatever. So you can right up into your call centers, you can say, well, okay, this just happened. This is how we're going to handle the call. So let's practice that right now. So it's one of the things that it's so immediate and so precise that I sound like a salesman, don't I? But it is, there's not many things I get excited about, but it's one of these things. And what I always say to people is, I just did this with door-to-door salespeople. So a lot of telephone companies outsource door-to-door sales. I said, what better group to use than door-to-door salespeople? I sent it, and I said, rather than me send a PowerPoint or sales BS, which you see every day,
Right.
they promise it'll do all of this, and then you get it in, and it's. I remember somebody said there was a tender for lift jacks, but they forgot to add they needed brakes as well. So somebody bought a whole slew of lift jacks without brakes because it wasn't specified. So I said, look, I'm going to create a role play, door-to-door sales. You're selling against this company. I sent it to him. That night he took it. He scored 8 out of 10. His email said to me, this is far more impressive than I thought it would ever be. And now we're talking, and then it's gone to a wider discussion, not just Cicero, but other things that we do. So it's one of these things that I've never seen anything have such an impact so quickly. And especially those that are considering, if you're doing role plays today, or if you're thinking about how to upskill people, and one of the things is we have avatars, but probably 30% of businesses need avatars and 70% don't. But the 30% that do are the ones that do direct to people. So it's the cabin crews in airplanes. It's the retail people. It's physicians. It's selling to, it's pharmaceuticals. We had somebody, I think it was in Singapore, using this to basically learn how to talk to customers when they didn't have the right prescription, or they were, and things like that. Or physicians when they have to give bad news about a diagnosis. Where did they learn that? Like, it's not something that's easy. So, you can put something like this up in front of them. So it is, as I said, I was the biggest curmudgeon and the last one on board. And I am sort of the chief evangelist. I will break it. I use it every day, 7 days a week, because it's just easier to show people how it can impact them rather than talk about it.
Are you worried that you may get sued by companies who want to cling to their old ways of training their salespeople?
Sued?
Because you're making them obsolete.
No, but you see, this is to help the salespeople. It's not. So this is, you're in a call center and you look at a call center and you look at, you've got, 5%, 10% top performers. You're trying to figure out how do we bring the rest up? And we're doing this right now. I won't tell you, it's for a very large telephone company. We're interviewing their top performers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take their tips and tricks and the various things they use, and we're going to develop a role play for the rest of the group and measure it to see this group they're just doing it the same old way. And it doesn't mean that role play is the only thing that you need, because it may be that you need a little PDF. Like, you need to know how to sell. This doesn't, this is sort of the tailpipe, if you will, to make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to teach you or tell you how to do it. And the nice thing about this is we can make it follow a sales process as well. So if you have a sales process, so the first thing we do when we create a role play, you create fast method, and then you drag and drop any content you have about your company, about who you're selling, whatever. And what that's going to be used for is the assessment. And then on the other side, you drag in, are there sales methodologies you want to be judged by? And you can drag those in. And then to create these role plays, you fill in, I swear, 3 fields. The first field, the longest one, is you need a sentence to describe the scenario. So you describe it in the context of the AI or the avatar you're going to be. So, you are means you, the avatar, are going to be this in this situation. You click on who what the avatar is. Is it and what you are? So I'm a salesperson for XYZ company, or the avatar is a surgeon or something like that. And you press a button, and with those three fields filled in, it creates the role play and looks at the content you've dragged into it as well. And it all happens in probably 35, 40 seconds. And then you pick your avatar, you pick your voice, we have accents. And the reason we have the languages we do is they all have to be speaking 29 languages. So that there are only certain voices that you can use for that, but you'll have dialects. So for example, we'll have English with a German accent, English with a Portuguese accent, Australian, British, because when we do work in Europe, they all like the British accent, so they expect that. In the US, they use American. That's typically what happens. So you choose your avatar, you choose your voice, and then you choose a background. So what I often do is snap a photo off their website, put that in the background or whatever, and you're done. Oh, and then you go to the assessment and you weight it the way you wish, and that's it. And when KLM saw this, I remember them saying, "Can we have a call? Because we don't believe you can do this in 5 minutes."
Right.
And I said, "Sure, we can have a call, but why don't I do this? I'm going to record it in real time, how I created." And one of the first ones I did for them was, your baggage people are coming in late, so your managers need to know how to talk with them. The next one I created a week or two later was, customers are fighting over a bin space up top. And the next one I did was customers coming up to first class, to sit down, and they're not in the right seat. So they're asking, why are you out of your seat, that type of thing.
I think it's very, very creative. And share a little bit about the best practices for integrating role plays into existing sales enablement and sales training organizations.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Sorry, Gerhard.
Yeah. Can you share what is the best practice for implementing role plays and integrating that with what is existing in a company, in a sales training organization?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, we always say pick a problem to see if it's going to work for you. And normally we'll do some sort of trial to make sure it's a fit. So they pick a problem and then they measure the results. And then if it looks good, then they'll spread that in and it'll go further. But the biggest, I always say, AI readiness is one of the biggest issues, where I always say involve your IT people and security people up front. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, it will be an impediment to ever trialing it. And some people just have a policy that we just don't do AI. And Right. It doesn't matter. And then we've had other companies, like pharmaceutical companies, that say, we have a policy against Gen AI, but we've looked at your security. And if there's anybody we're going to try this with, we'd like to try it with you. And that's how it's proceeded. And, we've tried to design, we're an ISO 27001 SOC 2 company. So security is a huge deal for us.
So in essence, Cicero is like three solutions in one. You can do role play and achieve higher levels of performance. You can use the coaching function, where you can coach either to a higher level of performance in general, or being more effective with one specific client. And then I think it's a third solution, because you are aggregating so much know-how through those role plays, so that you can actually use that and help marketing create better messages.
That's right. And it's one of these things that I showed a group today how you can take all of this disparate information and drag it in, procedures, manuals, or whatever, and it digests them and it's secure, and then you could ask questions of those documents. So the time that it takes away that you need to waste trying to find something, or I'm sure I read that in one of these documents. It's very cool how it can summarize it all.
Well, you seem to be very energized and passionate about helping the sales profession improve, and not just in your original industry, which is medical, but you're branching out to just about any industry that has salespeople, whether it's B2B or B2C.
Absolutely.
It's all about helping people create more customers and perform better.
Yeah, and I mean the reason that pharma are so attracted to this is if you claim something that's untrue, it will call you out in the assessment. So if I said to you, we have a new drug that cures cancer in 5 days, like I'll do anything to get the sale, right? So that I can get to the end, I get a high score. So I'm trying to fool it. When you go to the assessment, it'll mark me down, but it will also post on the side, truth and reconciliation. It'll say you claimed this, and this is not true. You didn't have supporting documentation, because what we would normally do
Right.
is you would drag and drop your supporting documentation about your drug into Cicero, and then it would measure you against that. It's like today, I'm here at the Port of St. John. I made a claim, like practicing. I said, the Port of St. John is one of the only ice-free ports in Canada. And at the end of it, it said, you made a claim that you were the only ice-free, but Halifax is, and Vancouver is, and so it'll correct me. So that's one of the nice things about it. But there's really, I mean, if you look across industries, we have many telecommunication companies using it, airlines, manufacturing, service, consulting companies are using it. We've got brewers, distillers, spirits companies using it. Just trying to think of some of the others. More medical device companies are using it in Europe. Yeah, it's really a cross section. Logistics, as I mentioned, people like Maersk. Yeah, there's no vertical that doesn't benefit. There are certain verticals that benefit from because we have competitors that may not have an avatar, but when I ask companies if an avatar is critical, they'll say absolutely, absolutely, because we sell to real people, and it helps. And we have the ability that you can turn the camera on, and it will actually measure and report on your body image as well, and whether the empathetic part of you. So all of these things, style, tone, effectiveness, we can measure. It just depends on what features you want to turn on or off.
I think it's brilliant. So you're doing a webinar. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, what I like to do is we have the mandatory PowerPoints to go through, which I'll go through. But what I normally I'm not a fan of PowerPoints. I think I've told you that. But what we would do is basically show you what a role play looks like, show you what a coach looks like, and then show you how we build it. Because the thing that's, as I said, that's more impressive than the end result is the ease of which you can do it. And I'm telling you, I didn't take any training. I just decided, just give me a password and let me get started. And there was only one thing I couldn't figure out. And that was, how do I send a link to somebody to try it? And that was the only thing. There's a little gear up in the top right. They explained you have to click on that. And what I can do is, if I'm sending it to 5 different people, I can send 5 different links just to see if they tried it. And which is very nice too, that when we send it to people who are considering it, we know if they ever tried it or not. And you can tell if there's a frequent, let's have a look at it. You can see that they really see the efficacy of doing something like this. So hopefully in that time frame, we'll go through it and show what it really is. No PowerPoints, or very few. But yeah, that's what we plan on doing.
I have a final question. Have politicians actually used that to perfect their pitch?
Well, I wish they would, but not only that, and if you go, they have these people. I remember Kramer. Remember, he would go into a hospital and pretend there was something wrong with him, and then he'd have to. And I actually have a cousin who does this in Calgary. He's sick all the time. He pretends sick. They give him a script. I said, you can do this with role play. You can tell the avatar what's going to be wrong with you. So
right.
Anyway, it's politicians, or if you want to talk about, tariffs or anything, you can put the most current information, and you can practice before you go and say anything, because Nowadays, better not to say anything, to say something.
Right. So you could technically give a Cicero license to the Canadian Prime Minister in preparation for a
100%.
meeting with Trump.
Yeah, I've thought about it many times, but then you go through the public tender process, and then what happens perhaps is people purport to do the same thing, and they choose them, and you don't get chosen because there's 300 people, and so governments are typically not, not my primary target. Let's just put it
Right.
that way.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But I think it's wonderful what you have created because you are accelerating learning and you promote earning in the process. The salespeople that use Cicero, they're the higher earners
Yeah,
and the faster learners.
yeah, for sure. And the people who they want to better themselves. And I know even before our budgeting exercise, we actually present to a really, really mean person who's going to decide on our budget.
Wow.
And that's a true story. So we're ready for everything.
Is there any application in the field of psychology where psychologists can train themselves in diagnosing, let's say, a ADD
I
patient?
don't know. It would be interesting. I mean, you really just have to give it, the symptoms and, references and see what happens. But, one of the things that a lot of people that try this, like a lot of very big companies and executives who are not going to be the ones that are going to create these, the one thing they want to do is say, can you ask it like a really off the wall question to see what happens? And they love what happens because it really adapts to virtually anything they say. Like it will not stump you because it's unscripted. That's the nice thing about it. So
Right.
it is different, but I think when companies see this, they kind of know, and we sell this to people that are involved in custom, in training at companies, but salespeople, directly like bypassing. Um, I would say bypassing even training. Sales groups are reaching out directly, service, HR. So, tough discussions. We have companies in Saudi Arabia using this for conflict resolution. So when you say politics, it's not far off. But, that's what we have others that they're putting in new systems of contracts. And everybody has to know that now instead of 14 different contracts, we have one and this is what it's going to be. So they practice. We do it with interviews. So you have to interview a few hundred people. Well, how do you learn to interview? How do you know what questions to ask? So we actually created an interview roadmap so that you can use this for that. So it's very adaptable.
That's awesome. So how can people learn more about you and your solution?
Well, you can there is a website. It's cicero.app, cicero.app. And actually, you can go on, you can see use cases, and you can ask Cicero questions. And it's using what we call Coach. So ask any question you want about the product, and it'll come back with an answer and response to you. So you'll see how it works on the role play side as well as on the Coach side.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Paul. Is there any question that I should have asked? Because I used Cicero to prepare myself for the interview with Paul Hanson.
No, I think, I think, it's one of these that I think as people use it or have a look at it, might have more questions. But look, it's wonderful that you've taken the time to even listen to me about this.
Well, I think that your passion for helping people improve is really contagious, and we actually planned for this interview to be 20 minutes, but we're double time because I can't stop listening to you.
Well, that's good. It's fun. No, I mean it's genuine. My wife says I'm the type of person that I work because I like my work.
Right.
And I work every day of the week. On my vacation, my wife says, "Can you put that down for a minute?" And I said, because it's fun. Like it really is fun. But what's fun is to see how our customers, because I play the long game. I
Right.
want clients for 10 and 12 years or
Right.
more. And it's about relationships and trust and transparency to make sure they know what they're getting. Because the last thing, that's why we say, why don't you have a trial? Because the last thing I want to do is give you a solution that you think doesn't fit when you
Right.
put it in. We
Right.
don't want that. So
Well, and I can understand your passion, because when I did those video role plays and saw salespeople's brains light up and discover a new way of performing and emulating the top performers, and it's a joy. It's not work. It's play, and you release new energies and you light up their brains.
yeah, and I guess the most famous quote we had from the people who use it the most, Medtronic, said, "It's not role play, it's real play." That's how they call it. It's real play. And so that was we didn't come up with that; they did.
Right.
We use it too.
Yeah, and but I think I'd rather call it a simulation, because when you teach pilots on how to fly a plane, you don't let them take off until they have gone through the simulator so many times until they feel real comfortable. And
right.
it is a technology that has been proven for the past 30 years already, and it works so well.
Yeah, and soft skills are one of those. I mean, there's Wall Street Journal says 92% of companies say soft skills are more important than technical skills now,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
sometimes we've forgotten how to talk to people,
Right.
how to listen, how to talk.
Right.
I mean, I used to speak at conferences. I'd put 2 slides up. They're just cue cards. Like, you don't need to see PowerPoint. You need to have a discussion,
Right.
and stories. And it's not for everybody. I'm the first one to say that, but it's some companies will look at it and say, maybe someday, maybe that's not for us.
Right.
But it's I've never really had anybody say, I've not. It's a little like you're a magician and you show them something, like they're kind of jolted, like, that's very cool how you did that.
Right. Right.
And I remember I was in Geneva, well, actually in Neuchâtel, with a company, and I created a role play. We had to get out of the conference room. I created a role play holding my laptop. I was walking out the door and got in the cab and hit send to the group that were back in, and they still remember that you did that role play for us while you were walking out, and they still use it. And that was the impact. So they said that was the most impressive thing they've seen. So it is fast, and it's good. So, but enough. I sound like I'm a sales guy now. I don't want to.
Yeah, AI can make us all smarter.
What's that?
AI will make us all smarter if we use it right.
It will. Yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't have to destroy our careers or destroy our
Right.
lives, but you can use it. I describe it. It's like we have ingredients for food and we have recipes. Well, that's kind of what people
Right.
are making Gen AI pieces, and they're making recipes and they're coming up with solutions. But the problem with AI, if you don't get a trusted vendor, is you don't know if the ingredients are going to kill you or not. What I mean by that is you don't know. Like, you can go get the Chinese LLM or the
Right.
how that works. But people are looking, that they're so afraid, and they should be. They have to ask a lot of security related questions.
Yeah.
If they don't, it will affect. If you have a bad case, and I encourage people to spend a lot of time. We've got so many documents on security. Talk to us, because if you put this in and there's a failure with security, you will not get AI in for years to come, because that's how people make. You get a bad vendor and you're out of the game for a while. So it's better to do it small with a trusted group, whatever. It doesn't have to be us, but any AI.
What I like best probably about your solution is because you know what compliance means in the medical field, and you can prepare salespeople to stay in their swimming lane and be confident. And I'm sure that in the financial services industry, there's a lot of compliance where you need to have those guardrails for salespeople that call out salespeople if they step over the line.
That's right. And we're doing a lot of work in the finance area. So there's even another level of security. So for example, in Canada, where we may have cloud and that cloud server sits in the US, it can't, it has to be in Canada. So we configure that differently. But they're using it for wealth management. So they're basically speaking to one of their people that has millions of dollars in their accounts, and they have to practice. And we've made, I remember the first time one of these guys came to us, they gave us this role play that was so complex that, it had all these steps in it. And I honestly didn't know if we could build it. And one of our customer success engineers built it over the weekend, and I was just gobsmacked that he could build it. And they saw it, and they could not believe how precise it was. Because they had, if it was over, the return was less than this, you do this, it was over. Like it had all kinds of if and thens in it. And it was remarkable how well it worked.
Where did the name Cicero come from? Who came up with that?
Our CEO, Bill Friedman, on the weekend one day. So we used to call it Simulearn. And then he thought about it. And one weekend he decided it should be called Cicero, from the, I think, Roman philosopher and whatnot. That was his name. So
I think it's brilliant. Marcus Tullius Cicero, 106 BCE to 43 BCE, was a Roman statesman, lawyer, scholar, philosopher, and orator.
yeah,
He was born into a wealthy equestrian family.
a Renaissance man.
Yeah, he was educated in Rome and Greece, excelling in rhetoric and philosophy. Wow.
Well, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. That was illuminating, enlightening, and a lot of fun. You bring joy back to sales training. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerhard. All right. Bye.